Greetings, Earthlings. Welcome to another episode of the 10 Laws podcast with East Forest. I am said cardinal direction in the forest of the East. This week, I have a conversation with Shane Norte. And Shane came across his path because he founded something called the Church of the People for Creator and Mother Earth. That is actually their URL of their website as well. He has Native American lineage and bloodlines, and he is living on a reservation in sort of Southern California, a little east, I think north and east of San Diego, if I'm correct. And he's doing work with psilocybin mushrooms on for the public, with people, and this is pretty amazing stuff and interesting, like the kind of edges that he's working against, both culturally and legally. And I wanted to learn more about it and understand sort of what he's doing, how he's doing it, how it's working for him, what's not working for him. And so that's the conversation that we get in, and I think you're going to enjoy it. It was super fun to talk to Shane, and at the beginning of this conversation, he's pretty amped up, and he goes on a bit of a beautiful rant, and I do slow him down after that, and I'm like, it's all G, my friend, and then we get into a nice rhythm. But I just want to let you know, the opening monologue, it's not all like that, and Shane was just kind of, we had some like technical difficulties at first. I think some people, you get a little ramped up because it's like, I probably should have just taken a deep breath before I hit the record button. But just a little heads up. I just want to say thanks for you folks who have reviewed the podcast. Thanks for the 5-star review. It's easy to do on Apple Podcasts. Thanks for doing that and for writing review if you get a chance. Also, thank you for those of you who support the podcast by joining the East Forest Council on Patreon. That's patreon.com/eastforest or just at eastforest.org. Scroll down on the homepage and you'll learn more about it. It's a way to support the podcast, which is currently offered for free in its full form. But I do add extra content over there, solo casts, unreleased music. We have a monthly Zoom council gathering at a certain tier, among other things. So check it out. See if you'd like to dive deeper with us and join that experiment of the East Forest Council on Patreon. Otherwise, you can check out any live dates coming up, retreats, things like that. That's also at eastforest.org. And my new album, Possible, starts releasing starting April 9th, everywhere that you listen to music. The first song is called that. It's the title track, Possible. And it's, can't wait to share it with you soon enough. Right now, because of digital trickery, I'm actually in Costa Rica, God willing, to play a benefit concert for the Fight for the Forgotten organization, Justin Wren's organization. And so I recorded this one a week in advance because I knew I'd be on the road. But I hope to do next week's episode, also God willing, from the road, from the Rica of the Costa. So hopefully Rod and I can put something together for you so we can kind of, I thought it's always fun to have stuff when it's on location. Okay, well, let's dig into this conversation with Shane Norte. Here it is. Well, Shane, thanks so much for joining us and for taking the time and for reaching out. I think what you got going on, at least on the face of it, looks extremely interesting and provocative and brave. And so I thought it'd be cool just to take some time if you could. I just want to learn. I want to learn more personally. So if anybody out there learns as well, that's a bonus. So I think a great place to start is if you could just give us a little bit of broad background about who you are, and then we can get into the nitty gritty.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you again for having me on here, brother. Appreciate the time, taking out of your time to have me on here and, express some of these things, in the psychedelic world, medicine world. And, name's Shane Norte, coming out of Southern California. Paiutes land means the Westerners. We're some of the first people down here in Southern California. We originate from Oceanside, but where we're at now, we're up by Palmer Mountain. It's about 35 miles, I'd say east. But so what's really cool about that is before we were here, when the world flooded, there's a river right behind us called the so-called San Luis Rey. But when the world flooded, we caught that river, and we ended up coming up to where we're at now with Palomar Mountain. And so this became our sacred land. So just a little story on that. I'll get more into that later in the talk. But no, I got my own Native American psychedelic assisted therapy church, Church of the People for Creator, Mother Earth. And, I'll just give a little, like I said, breakdown of the journey. So about 3.5 years ago, I lost my father to cancer. And so within that time, I went through the whole spill of, you got to go to church, you do your thing, bury your loved ones, all those. But during that time, I never had full closure. I never had full disclosure of the passing of my father. So I ended up getting involved with some of my brothers from Oklahoma who they run NAC, Native American Church. And I was just sharing them like, hey, I just lost my father, and I'm hurting still, and I don't feel completely healed. So I asked if we can have ceremony. So they ended up coming down, and we had peyote ceremony. We set up our lodge. And within that lodge, I got all my healing. I got the things I needed to let my father go in that good way and come to terms of his passing. But in that time, I was sitting there and I was like, hey, man, this should be given to other people. Like other people should have this, because I know a lot of people can relate to like losing a loved one and not having that time to like fully go through and cope with it. So I was just expressing to myself like, hey, man, like, there's other people who could benefit from this, not just natives. There's people who need help with traumas, with passing a loved one, substance, drug abuse. I'm not saying I had all that going on, but I had traumas and it helped me. So in that time, I was just thinking to myself, like, dang, like, what do I got to do? What do I got to do to figure this out? And so in that time, I started practicing.
But this was peyote, right? This was your first experience with saying.
This is like how it's kind of like forming, flowering, I guess. But yeah, so after the peyote, I kind of just was sitting with it, and I should have said this in the beginning, but before peyote, I was working with mushrooms for a while. I've been working with mushrooms about 7 to 8 years now. But before this, I was an activist. I started fighting out in Arizona. I was defending sacred land for Apache people. I don't know if you've read about it right now. It's a big fight going on right now. It's Protect Oak Flat, and so what the United States did is they slipped the Midnight Rider bill. And they got co-signers from Jeff Flake and Senator John McCain to basically sell the land, the copper mine, to a foreign mining company for $60 billion worth of copper. So in that meantime, I ended up staying there, occupying, and traveling all throughout the country, out of the country, standing up pipelines, Animus River, all these different things that happen amongst the Native communities. And so I just went out there and did the forefront, the front lines, a lot of the movements. I became a staff carrier, and I met with over 500 different tribes. And I just got acquainted, back to Native customs and what we do as Native people, fighting for the land, standing up for our culture, the loss of our identity, everything. So it was very cool to like get just thrown into that because before that, I was going to college. I was going to play football. I was at a junior college. I was going to transfer to San Diego State University. I was 315 pounds, O-line. I was gonna use that as like my avenue to kind of reach to my community to say like, hey, like you get off the res, you can get off the drugs, the suicide, you can make it out. And so I had a bro I was playing football with, and he's like, hey, bro, he's like, you ever try any mushrooms? And I was like, no. And he's like, hey, man, he's like, well, I'll give you some for free. He's like, you should try it out. He's like, I was like, well, what happens? I was like, do you trip out? Like, he's all, no. He's all, the best thing I could say is like, if you pray to God with it, he's like, I don't know. He's all, it just sounds like God hears you. He's like, that's all I could say. And he's like, I'll give it to you though for free. So he gave me that medicine.
That's a cool way to,
right? To
cool
come
way
across
to put it. Yeah.
And so I took it, and boom, just threw me right back to who I was, my connection. And basically it was telling me like, you want to find the truth for yourself, or do you want someone to try to tell you what they think the truth is? So that next day I went back to school. I quit football. I quit all my classes. I dropped everything. And my coach was like, what's going on, Norte? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, I guess it's what you people say when you find God, you know? I was like, I found God and I gotta go, you know? And so then I get home and I told my parents, and my parents were like, what the hell? You know what the fuck you doing? Like, we want to see you play football, da 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 da. And I got kicked out of my house. And so they just kicked me out right there. They're like, we want all your shit packed. Like, by the time the sun's up tomorrow, you better be out the house. And like, so I just got all my shit, you know? And so I ended up calling my bro. I was just like, hey, bro, like, I just got kicked out. I need a ride. And it was cool. So once he picked me up, right after I kicked out, I got introduced into my first sweat. So it was like, it was cool to like get kicked out, but go right into a sweat. And then at that moment, it was like I knew my journey was going to start. So then from there, like I said, I just started staying in San Diego, and I started to just dive into mushrooms more, you know, started engaging more in like my relationship with them and understanding. And then a little fast forward, now I'm back home after I do all my activism work and traveling the country and fighting native country, you know, everything. And I was at home, and I was sitting at home getting mad. I was like, man, like, why is it so hard for these natives to get it when we were the original people to have these plant medicines, these knowledges, these ceremonies, the understanding of this land? I was just losing it, man. And then my mom came over, and she's like, hey, I'm going to take you to this place. She's like, I'm going to take you to this place. And she's all, it's where our people, you know, had their ceremonies, their puberty rite ceremonies, where the women would be buried for 3 days or so. And then they come up, they write on the wall what they were showing or what their vision was. And so she's like, we're going to go up there. And she's like, all that hate and anger and mad that you got going on right now, she's like, leave it. She's like, don't bring that up there. You know, this is a sacred place. It's not a place to bring that. She's like, just let it go and let this rock speak to you. You know, let the land speak to you. Let these things tell you. Our people already know about this. We've already done this stuff. So just come up here. And so we end up going up there, and sure enough, man, these rocks all written on. And what really caught my eye on these other ones, so I go to this rock, and so it shows the sun, shows a whale tail, it shows the ocean. Because like I said, from where we're at, you can see the ocean. It's only 35 miles. And then it shows some mushrooms. It shows 2 mushrooms coming out like that, and then one in the middle. And then right there, it just kicked to me, like, why all this is so fluent, you know what I mean? And then why is it so just to the point, you know? And I realized right there, and my mom was like, yeah, like we've already done these medicines. We've done mushrooms. We already have ceremonies. And this is who we were. Like, okay. And that's why she's like, that's why I want to bring you up here. And then from that moment on, I kind of like, it gave me that boost, you know, because I was just really like, just frying my head, like, oh my God, like, am I the only one who knows this? You know, am I the only one who's going to be out here talking to my people about plants, you know? And then, so after that, I just started perfecting like my craft. I just started taking more medicine, and that's all. And I ended up having the sweat, and an elder came to me, and he was expressing, he's like, hey, he's like, you want to know something, right? He's like, you want to know about knowledge? He's like, well, he's like, what you're looking for with this medicine? He's like, first, ground yourself with the real world. Like, he's like, what you're going to find in this medicine, he's like, you're going to find it in the fire, you're going to find it in the water, you're going to find it in the air, you're going to find it in the land, find it in the sky, the stars, the moon. And he just started to express like everything you're looking for in this medicine. He's like, it's already there. And so he was saying, ground yourself in the real world, because he was saying, if you go into this other realm, he was expressing how like these spirits are old. So he was just saying how his spirits can manipulate and, you know, hijack whatever. But he was expressing how we had a house, and this house, it was for us to go to, not necessarily a house, but he was expressing it was a place for us to go to where we wanted to get songs, language, ceremony, all these things. And he was expressing like, he's like saying someone took over your house, not saying they own it, but he was just saying someone's in your house and you need to clean it up. Kind of like, I always use the metaphor of like, let's say you left a bike out for 10 years and like no one picks it up. And then that one person's like, hey, like, I've been seeing that bike there for 10 years. Like, no one's picked it up. No one's took it in. Like, I think I'm going to ride that bike today, you know? And like, so in that moment, I realized that I needed to get myself right as an Indigenous man, as a person, and who I was within my own like conscious thoughts. And so from that moment on, I just started like networking, and I was like, you know, I can't be the only one, because I can't be the only one who understands these mushrooms and works with these mushrooms. And so I started digging online, looking online, and I came across Decriminalized Nature Oakland. And I found out Carlos Pizzola, the CEO, co-chair, and I wrote him, I was just like, hey, we use medicines, we come from indigenous people, yada, yada, yada. And then sure enough, man, he comes down and he sets it up, and he loves it. And then from that on, he starts plugging me in with different people, different people in the psychedelic movement, Kevin Matthews, like Daniel Carcillo, Heroic Hearts, Jesse Gold, all these different people started very, very well connecting with me. And then after that, I ended up getting involved with Uncle Creepy Ian McCall. And so I ended up inviting him down and had a beautiful ceremony. And from there, things just started moving. I started to just build ceremony. And then, like I said, that bro, Carlos, he got me involved with Daniel Carcillo. And that was pretty cool. Everything hit off good. We set up good conversations. Everything was going. And then maybe a month or so after the talk, I get a call. And he's like, hey, man. He's like, Real Sports, Brian Gumble. He's like, they want to come film, He's like, they want to come down and film your spot. So we get everything set up. We start getting all this stuff set up. And everything was good. I went and spent like $4,000. I got a big old tent. I got all the food. I got everything situated. And then 2 days before the shoot, the producer calls me, and he's all, how producers are, all nonchalant to get their thing. And he's just like, hey man, everything's set up, everything's good. We're getting ready to go down there. And he's like, but I just want to know. He's like, I could shoot your whole ceremony, right? And then I was like, wait. I was like, no. And then he's like, well, what do you mean? He's all, I thought you said I could. I was like, I said you could shoot up until. He's like, nah. He's like, we've already spent thousands of dollars on this and da da da. And I was like, that's not my problem, man. I was like, how could you not respect that? Because I was like, in my mind, I was like, okay, when a film crew, let's say they went to a Mormon church, and the head of that church was like, hey, we're having service, you can't film right now. They would totally get that, right? And so I just told him, I was like, hey man, I don't want no big cameras and lights and mics in my Wamkish when people are going through their journey. And then he's like, I was like, you're being really offensive. I was like, you're being disrespectful to me. And he's like, well, how? Who am I being disrespectful to? And then I just hung up and I called Daniel Carcillo. I was like, what the hell, bro? I was like, this ain't cool, bro. I was like, you said everything was cool. I was like, you're going to put me on spot like that, have the producer call me. I was like,
okay,
you're going to cover me, right?
Shane. Hold on, I don't mean to interrupt you, but there's so many ideas here. I need to break it down just so people can keep track. Is that cool? We just got to slow it down a little bit.
Yeah, I got a lot. I got a lot of shit. All right.
I mean, there's multiple stories in one here. So we'll get back to this. Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah, your boy's in it.
So sorry, I just wanted to circle back. So I understand, just to summarize for myself and other people. So native lineage, you're currently, and you have a lineage to sort of different tribes, right? And I hear you say that you had your own process with peyote and a sweats, or am I correct? But then you discovered mushrooms on your own in your own life, but you said you discovered that there was a kind of lineage to your own history in your people with mushrooms. And that's where I want to start, because I was a little surprised to hear that you told your mother that you had this revelation with mushrooms and you got kicked out, but then your mother was the one who introduced you to this sort of sacred practice that involved some history with the mushrooms. So can you just fill us in briefly a little bit about what that connection is with psilocybin or mushrooms in general and native history in a ceremonial practice?
Yeah. Well, more so, that was my biological mother. I was living with my father at the time, so it was more my father.
Okay.
And my mom. But yeah, just to clear that up real quick. But no, yes. What I can say is in terms of that's why I have that. I don't know if you've looked at my site, but that's why I have it in the first. That's why I have it in my first little header of my site, where I talk about my friend and how he gave me those mushrooms and how he said, it's like God hears you. Well, the reason why I say it was such a connection, because growing up, I went through Christian and Catholic school, and I had to go through all the religious, critiques and whatnot. And so when I took those mushrooms, yeah, everyone has these God stories, but it's like, yeah, like God came to me and let me know what I needed to do for myself and my people. And yeah, it's taken me far already. And so I just say that it has a deep connection, just because as far as indigenous people, we have some of the oldest stories of this land that go back to creation, not only of animals and plants and this, but of when we first met the creator, when the creator and Mother Earth gave us our identities and our roles and all these things. So it's pretty cool to now get back accustomed to that. Cause I always tell people, before colonization and the knowledge that's here on the so-called United States, the knowledge we have is a lot older, supersedes that even, because a lot of those concepts are new, considering that we already had an understanding of the creator, Mother Earth, from what we knew here. So it was cool to like dive back into that old way instead of like beating my head on the wall trying to find the creator, Mother Earth.
And was there a tradition that you discovered in your own people with mushroom use that in the same way there is with peyote?
Just considering the fact of like we already have like our Wamkish, like where I go do my medicine in, it's called the Wamkish, and it stands for the big house. And basically it's where we check in with the creator, Mother Earth, and they tell us how to be out here or what we need to heal ourselves. So it was just cool to like hear that. And then also talking like to the medicine man around here, because there's the last family that had the Wamkish, and I was just expressing to him like, what do I call this, and he's like, this is our Wamkish, like this is where we heal, this is where we check in, where we get help. And not only that, but even prior, before that, we did datura too. But the thing is that caused a big stir, because the datura wasn't ours. The Jesuits brought that from San Clemente after they came from Catalina, after they came from getting the natives switched and converted over there. They brought that datura down here and try to hybrid our culture and use our culture against the datura. But it's cool because our tribe was the only one that fought them off and took them out outside of like Pachanga, Rincon, Paula. So like I believe that's also why the Wamkish is the only one here, because it's the only one that's true to its roots, considering how everyone had a Wamkish out here and there's no more Wamkishes except for the one that's here.
And inside the Wamkish, were you the first one, at least that in these modern times, to be bringing in psilocybin circles, or was that already happening?
It's in the modern time, yes, but in the past it's already happened. But as in 2020 and 2021, yeah, I'm the only one who's doing this work up here.
Because the way I understand it, with peyote ceremonies, it's not open to people outside the tribe, sometimes let alone even women. And so it's sort of cool and surprising that you're opening up the work you're doing to other people. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's the thing that I'm seeing, because like, obviously I know why they do that, but as for me, I just see it as a collective whole. Like we all need to collectively work with each other, not necessarily bring each other down, but we all have collectively differences that can benefit the whole. Because I know a lot of people get caught up in differences, but for me, I like differences because they can all add a unique piece to the mix. And that's where I'm trying to do with this Wamkish, is not only open my traditions and culture to people, but because it's not just natives here. So I always tell people like there's other races here. And for me, if a race that's been here over hundreds of thousands of years has lived this long, well, to me, it's like I feel like the people, at least if they want to, I'm not saying you have to, but at least if people want a better understanding of themselves here, why wouldn't you want to engage in some ceremonies that have been here longer than a lot of other practices that are just kind of babies here on this land,
Totally. I think most people think about the Native American church and they think about peyote mostly. And I personally, until you had reached out to me, had not heard of any North American tribes that were working with mushrooms. I guess I'd heard about it more from Mexico area, Yucatan and so forth, Oaxaca.
That's why I think it's very important to get this story out because it's real, and we're working with all the big dogs, so it's like it's working.
Yeah, and so tell me a little bit about then. You guys are in California, and what the legality is, and your ability to do this work and do it openly or not, and with people coming. Because I'm assuming the people who come, how do they like? Tell me about who finds you and how you're able to promote this work or not.
Well, it's more so I find them, like, kind of like how I reached out to you. That's how I reach out to
Yeah.
people, just like, hey, like, you want to try this out? You want to check this out? Like, let me know. I'm doing the work, yada yada yada. And then as far as like the legalities, I live on private property, and then I talked to the tribe already about the Wamkish, and then we have the Native Religious Freedom Law Act, which states prior before 1973, all Native ceremonies were illegal and all practices were deemed illegal. But because of the Native Religious Freedom Law Act, any sovereign Native within their reservation or as part of a federally recognized tribe has the right to now practice their ceremonies. So I just use all that. And then the fact that I'm actually a 501c3 registered church, then that gives me that waypoint already in the state as well with using the church model. So it's like I have the church model protecting, and then I have the Native Religious Freedom Law Act, and then I also have the fact that I'm on private property and I gate up my land and everything. So it's like people really don't have no right. And if they do, I mean, I got all the legalities to fight it, and I have the historical proof, and you know.
Yeah, I think it's very bold and brave, and I think you should have that right. I was just curious if, I mean, as you know, now that you're getting probably more tapped into the various psychedelic scene that's going on, there's a big movement right now for psilocybin therapy, like Oregon passing that measure, and as you know, the decriminalized nature stuff in different cities. But all of that is about being able to do the work in a way that is legal and isn't shut down by the feds or even on a state level. And so it's kind of a big deal to me that you guys are able to do this work and and have the ability to do it, and you've been allowed to do it. I think that's fantastic. So
Yeah, no, that's why I'm trying to carry out, because I want people to know, like a fight for our culture and ceremonies is a fight as well. And that's one thing that natives have always had. And to me, it's like, if a Christian, Catholic, Jew, Mormon, any other religion can have their right of faith in this country, then it's like the natives, who are some of the oldest worshiping people on this land, not the world, but just of this land, should have every right too.
of course, yeah. Can you tell me a bit about the ceremonial protocol, or like kind of how you do these ceremonies and where that came from? Did you make it up, or are you pulling from a lineage that you've heard about from people in your tribe or your elders?
Yeah, it's all coming to me. Like everything that I'm doing, it's like I said, I don't have no elders to teach me. My mom and dad weren't cultural people, so it's very cool to witness all this coming into to sway. Like it's kind of like it's letting me choose what's right and what's wrong, outside of like me trying to like be super critique, which I am. I'm not gonna sit here and say I'm not critique, but I like to let people feel the fire themselves. Kind of like how they say sometimes you got to touch a stove to know it's hot. So like basically what I do is let's just say you showed up. So it's a whole day thing, because I like to build integration. I don't just like, I mean, there's been people who show up the last hour before we start and they pay for it. Not a bad thing, but there's a reason why I tell you show up at 1. You know what I mean? So like,
Mm-hmm.
so if you were to show up at 1, what we would do is we would head up the mountain, and like I said, that mountain is in relation to what saved us from the flood. So I would say like the medicines, everything up there, it goes back way back. So I would say like if anything
What do
knows
you
how to
mean by
deal
the
with
flood?
trauma, like when the world flooded, like when the whole world flooded. Because I always say it didn't just flood in one spot. The whole world flooded simultaneously. And I always say those who listened either went to the top of a mountain or they went underground, and those who were arrogant got washed away.
So this land, you're saying when you start the ceremony at 1 o'clock, you guys go up the mountain.
Yeah, we'll go up the mountain, and we'll put down prayers to the cedars, and we'll acknowledge the cedars. And basically just ask them for help, because I always say they're like a buffer because of how long they've been here. So I always tell people they're going to know how to communicate with the sky and the earth a lot more efficient than a human can. And so we go get that medicine, and then after that we go to the springs, and we'll offer some tobacco to the springs, and then we'll go down to where the house is, and we'll collect sage, because all the white sage grows back here. That's all we have is white sage all through the back of our hills everywhere. And so we'll go hand pick the sage, and then we'll get the elderberry, and we use the elderberry to help clean the air and clear ourselves off of negative things, whatnot. And then we'll set up the wamkish, and I'll have everyone go get the tarps. So we'll get like canvas tarps, and I'll have everyone start to go set up around, and then I'll start raking inside, and I have everyone like pick up, everything. And then from there, after the wamkish is set up, my wife, she'll usually make some dinner. We'll come in, we'll eat, and after we eat, then it's I'll go over protocols, and I'll just lay down the protocol, and then we have about maybe 40 minutes to rest, and that's when everyone will change, get their clothes warm, blankets, everything that they need. And then we go in, and we'll start at about 9, and we'll go to about 4, and we just go from there. And then at 4, we'll come in, we'll have a little breather, breath, and then we wake up at like 8 or 9. I usually wake up earlier just because my kids are always up at like 5:36. So I'm up, and we'll go get the tarps, and then we take them over to the sweat, and we'll set up the sweat, and then we'll go to the river, we'll get the rocks, we'll light the fire, we'll get it hot, and we'll clean out and be ready for whatever's next. Eh?
So when you go into the ceremony, what is guiding the actual ceremony? Is it in darkness? Is it in silence? Is there music? And what kind of dosages are you taking? You guys take it in a tea, or you just do you eat it? Is there any particular way that you ingest it?
So what we do is we'll do 15 to 25 mushrooms, and we weight it out. It's between like 16 and 24 grams, 25 grams, depending on the day. But no, we go in, and it's a fire. I have it a fire. I'll have the fire going right in the middle. And no, it's more so of like it's like you go to work, like whether it's you're hurting, someone's hurting, or you're just hurting for the world, whatever it may be. And it's kind of like we start creating dialogue to like bring all that stuff out, whether it's like, hey, how you doing? What's going on? Or I'll start talking about like native issues with the water, the land, the people, the women, the drugs. And then that will just get it going, because everyone can relate to something of that nature, whether it's abuse of the earth or someone in your family, your friend. We've all been lied, hurted, cheated on, misguided. So it's like, it's cool once everybody starts getting in. And then once I put down the cedar, the sage, and all that is its own thing. So it's like it does its own thing, like the wamkish and everything. Because I always tell people, without the mushrooms, the wamkish was already sacred. We were born in there. We had our puberty rite ceremonies in there. We were married in there. And when we died, we were cremated in there, or cremated on the outside of it while the medicine man prayed with the family. So it's like, even to not be on mushrooms, if you witnessed any of those events, that'd be a life-changing event itself,
Yeah. So you're saying you have like a group of mushrooms, 16 to 25 grams, I think you said. Is that shared amongst the group, and you eat it throughout the night, or do you just sort of dose up and then?
It's on the person.
That's an incredible amount of mushrooms. I mean, do you know how much? Is it psilocybin-based mushrooms?
Oh yeah, but the thing is like, it's not a matter of like that's what you have to take. That's just what the members take. Like, let's say you're new. I've had people take 1. I've had people take 2. I've had people take 5. It's just on you. It's just on you. You know what I mean? It's just what you feel. I've had people sit in there with no mushrooms. So it's all on the person. I just let people know, like, for the members, we're already doing the work. So we just go in there,
And it's sort of like talking mixed with a ritual, it sounds like, and then you just kind of move freely through it and let the spirit sort of guide you where you guys want to go.
Kind of, not necessarily. It's more so like you guide yourself, and if you're not gonna be right there, then the place itself is gonna reveal itself to you, whether it's like you being super fidgety, whether it's you wanting to leave, whether it's you wanting to get in your car and go home. Like, there's just so many things happen to some people, and it's like, hey, like, remember what you came here for. Like, did you come here to just leave? Did you come here to just get freaked out? Like, you came here to pray, you came here to heal. Like, remember that, and it's like, we always keep reassuring that and going through it with everybody. And it's just reassuring, cause it's different. As I always tell people, like, it's different. It's not like your casual, like, just taking mushrooms. It's very different. That's why I'm open to now share these things, because I'm just getting tired of seeing all the other things out there when it's like, there's some real work going on, just like there's real work out there. But I want people to see too, there's also work going on out here.
Yeah, do you see it more as like people doing work on themselves, or people using themselves as a mechanism for prayer for other things or something larger? Or is it the same thing?
I'd say it's kind of both. I mean, I think everyone's got their own personal thing for it. I mean, it's like, as far as myself, like, that's all I'm trying to do is just be the conduit to show people what's here already. Like, not necessarily like, I mean, yeah, I'm healing myself, but I know that, I mean, I'm only 25, and I know that fucking life's hard, and I've already had my ups and downs. So I'm not going to just expect it to be all peach and creams. So that's why I just say I'm here to be like the one to open the door, but you got to walk through it.
Totally. Yeah, and is music ever a part of this, or sound, or any kind of rhythm during the ceremony?
Yeah, but no, because I always tell people, a lot of the sounds, like, so a lot of the sounds they didn't originate. So, like, I always tell people, like, for instance, for our stories, when we first started, like, praying, it wasn't in a song form. Because I always tell people, like, when Indigenous songs, they're more so of prayers in an artistic form. It's just a very beautiful way of expressing a prayer. And so I was saying, like, when we're in there, it's all quiet. It's all quiet and everything. And it's more so like, because I always tell people, like, some sounds, they're not as old as, like, for instance, the sound of a fire. That is very old, and that can go into any human being's primitive being. Don't matter what race you are. Before the electrical age, every race had to have a fire.
Yes.
So it's kind of like, I let the natural thing reawaken your own spirit.
Yeah, that's very true. Like, that is a very primal, powerful sound, the sound of fire, and just sitting around a fire. But one thing I'm surprised by, Shane, is that from my own experience, uh, most indigenous ceremonies that I've come across use song and music as sort of the central guide. So it's really interesting to me that, is this something that you sort of intuitively developed, or this is how you heard maybe things have been done with your people, that it's more about letting the sounds be the sounds in the room, and just allowing it to be more freeform?
It's kind of like, I feel like it's something that I've built myself, like, kind of like going the distance, and then, like, trying to, like, test my own relationship with God, and my own, like, I guess, cry out to God, kind of like when a baby's like, Dad and Mom, like, crying for them, what I mean? Seeing if they'll come, or give them that toy or that candy or something, you know what I mean? And so that's what it was, because it's like, when I'm in that medicine, it's like, I always tell people, there's no gimmicks for me. It's just talking to the man upstairs and Mother Earth, and anything else is like, I don't want to hear it, because if you're not the creator of Mother Earth, what do you know that they already don't? And that's kind of like where I just go straight to creator Mother Earth, because to me, it's like, that's where the foundation of all is, even if people don't believe it, eh?
So, do you get any kind of pushback from your community on this work, or others outside the community?
Not really. I mean, I mean, obviously you get the haters. I mean, everything. But in terms of reality, no, man. Everyone's kind of respectful to it, because it's like it was almost on the verge of extinction, And then to see a youth, especially someone my age, like, you look at a 25-year-old out here on the res, they're on fentanyl, they're drinking, they're whippets, they're women, they're doing so much stuff. But I think for the community to see me doing this work now, and then, like, working with, like, veterans, natives, non-natives, other non, people, indigenous people, I think it's just showing them, like, hey, like, that guy really is doing something, and he's not just crashing or hurting someone or drinking, or we're not burying him because he died of fentanyl or suicide, you know what I mean? So I think it's given a better hope for our people, considering that it used to be so strong and now it's so rare.
Yeah, like what? Tell me a little bit about what is going on with your people these days. I mean, I know the broad strokes, some of the things you mentioned, but I'd love to hear about it from you.
Shoot, man, I mean, obviously everyone's, doing their thing, but in reality of like the core, it's sad, man. Like the culture's not there. The communities of like ceremonies not there. Like just the overall communities, like not there. It's there, but it's only for selective reasons, and it's like, it's pretty sad, man. That's why I'm doing this work. Cause like for my kids, like my dad or mom never showed me anything what it was to be native. The way I see it, I look like the same person in the mall, so it's like, that's where for me, I want to be able to show my kids like, hey, like, it might have skipped me, but it ain't skipping you. And then be damned if anyone else misses it out because it's going to be here. So it's like, it feels good and it gives me hope because like, I feel like if I didn't do this, I'd be just like my people, like strung out on something, crashing, fighting someone, hurting someone. And, so it's cool to like now want to help people and help my own people. We just did a food drive last week. David Bronner sponsored us and gave us soaps and sponsors the church. So it was cool to like just show my community like how we're doing and what we're doing, and outreaching. So,
Mm.
I mean, it's sad, but I mean, I don't let that get to me because the work I'm doing and the fact that the Wamkish has survived genocide, prosecution, being burned at the cross, like everything. Like before, I always tell people before the government made our ceremonies legal, the churches were already after us. The churches were already murdering us and doing all these things to us. So it's like, it's cool to see it come back first circle. And that's why I'm not afraid anymore to like share my story because it's lived this long and it deserves to be heard because shit, everyone can get a piece of the pie now.
No, I appreciate you sharing it. I wanted to ask you if like your parents, weren't teaching you and they weren't they didn't have that cultural link. Where are the resources for you to still tap into that through line to your people's teachings for thousands of years? Like, how do you still access that?
It was because like you can go to all the culture schools, you can go listen to all the stories, you can go watch all the ceremonies, but until you like dive in and do it yourself, you're never gonna know, and you're not going to. Just like if you never learned how to ride a bike, how could you? So that's where I'm trying to keep this avenue open because it's like I want the people to come, but at the same time, it's like it's just hard because I know what they're going through. So that's why I'm trying to like just be out there and invite people. And I invite a shitload of people, and I get all the excuses in the world, man.
Yeah, well, it's a very vulnerable thing to step into that space, and you have to trust the container and the person who's leading it. So, on one level, I can understand how people, I get that it's hard to carve the time out of your life, but there is that fear of like, well, what is this, and what are we going to do? Because you're really opening yourself up, and you spoke about early on uh, sort of like how people are like people things are in your house as you described it. You want to talk more about that because I'm assuming you're sort of mean energies and not maybe protecting yourself or having the right container or intention.
Well, I'm not talking about my house. I'm talking about a spiritual house.
That's
Like as if you were to
that's what I
like
meant.
leave this
But yeah,
plane. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is like, okay, like, so let's say these spirits, I'm gonna try to put this into terms that you can grasp, maybe not, maybe will. But let's just say there's spirits that have always just had a thing against us humans. And now there was a chance to finally slip in and try to like get what they wanted. And that's where I say that's where all the stuff came in, whether it was genocide, religious oppression, you name it. It all has different forms, but in the end of it, there's a main drive to it that creates all these different forms of it. But there's a main force of driving it, and so that's what it was saying was like this force has got into your house and is now basically controlling the humans again. And now it's kind of like I need to go in there with like not me because it's not about me, but it's about what the Creator and Mother Earth have and has always had intent, and to go in and set that straight. And then, like I said, reclaim our house because I feel like that's one of the things that this country is lacking is the originality of my ancestors. Because I always say people can say what they want, but we had this land base a lot longer than 500 years. and we took way better care of it. We weren't building nuclear reactors. We weren't polluting the air. We weren't fucking doing all this stuff. And yeah, we were fighting amongst each other, just like every race. But I guarantee you, we took way better care of this earth right here and our relationship with the creator Mother Earth. And so that's where I'm trying to say of like something's in our house, as in these spirits that think they know something when they're just clowns tricking the less knowledgeable spirits.
Yeah. Sounds like we have another guest on the show. One of your kids is come up to the mic.
Yeah. I got my daughter, and I got my bro Mark here too.
Well, nice. And I can tell you're busy.
Yeah, always. 2 kids got you busy all day.
Well, man, I mean, it sounds, again, like you're really sort of, on one hand, trailblazing new ground into a very dynamic place that we're in as a people, a collective people now, and you're doing it in your own way, but at the same time, you're tapping into the way it's been done with your own family for a long time. And I guess I just applaud you for trying to make it work, and make it work in a way that speaks to you and speaks to people in and outside your direct family. So good on you.
Yeah, thanks, bro. It's like I said, it's been a good journey. I mean, shit, we had HBO come here, but they were dogs. Like, we had all this stuff. We're working, hey.
Yeah, it's a bit of a land grab right now in the psychedelic scene, because things are moving very quickly, and I think because of that, there's going to be a lot of mistakes made along the way, and it's important to have conversations. And as much as we can, I think it's important to learn from the lineages that have been here and are doing this kind of work. So, look, I appreciate you sharing whatever you've been willing to share about how that's connected to your own history, because otherwise, we're kind of floating out there right now, just making it up as we go along. And I hear you are a little bit too, but nonetheless, there seems to be that history. And that's really amazing to learn.
Yeah, no, that's why I want to offer it. Because it's just like, you know, you got all these so-called psychedelic cats. Well, it's like, come sit with a psychedelic cat who's been here for hundreds of thousands of years.
And is there anyone else in your community besides you who's been doing this work or pulling from?
I hate to say it, but it's just me. It's just me.
Amazing. And do you know of any other tribes in the United States that had worked with mushrooms as a people?
No, I mean, when I did my traveling, met over 500 tribes. I didn't find one.
Interesting. Well, how can people interact with you in your church?
They could show up. They could email me. They can pretty much those two show up and email me. That's all it takes.
What's the best way to find? Is it the website? Is that what you think is the best way?
Yeah, the website, because that has all my email and everything on it, and then my Instagram, just the acronym of the people for Creator Mother Earth. Because those are the only things I have. I don't have a Facebook or anything like that. I just have Instagram and email. That's it.
Okay. Well, I'll put those notes in the show notes, but I want to thank you for sharing a bit about what you're up to.
Yeah, definitely, man. And hopefully you get time. It'd be cool to see you show up.
I appreciate that invitation, brother. Thank you.
No, man, thank you, man. Because like I said, I think it's just time due, you know, even like, that's why I'm glad, like, I'm on a board. I'm a board member of Decriminalized Nature and all this, you know, because I get to have a little input in the psychedelic world. But as for me, it's like, I want to show people this side of it too, because it's older than the movement. What I do is older than the movement itself. So that's where I'm trying to just show people, like, hey, it's cool, you know, these games, these little gimmicks, the little, you know, posts and pictures. It's cool, but it's like, show up and let's do the real work.
Yeah.
Because we can all do good posts and take pictures with good people, but it's like, let's show up and do this work.
I appreciate that. Well, thanks for coming on the show. It's great to talk to you.
You as well, and thanks for hanging in with the technical difficulties.
Well, thank you, Shane, for sharing with us your process and what's going on down there. I appreciate that. Check out his website. Check out in the show notes. It's a very long URL, but I've linked to it down there to make it easy for you, just to click. And thanks again for everyone who's checking out the Patreon and supporting this podcast and diving deeper. Patreon.com/EastForest. And for giving the podcast a review, for subscribing, and for sharing it and sending us your messages of support, questions, answers, and love. team@eastforest.org is the way to do that. This song that you're hearing in the background is called Wayapunga, and it is named after a plant, Wayapunga, I believe is, I actually found an article on this plant recently. You take it as a purgative sometimes with ayahuasca ceremonies, and we took it, my former partner and I, Karina, when we went down to the Amazon to do some work with an ayahuasquero, vegetalista, and he gave us this plant as soon as we had arrived. It took us like 4 days to get to this place. We arrived and he's like, okay, drink this. I got to go to town. We're like, okay. And we drank it, and I basically was vomiting for 24 hours. It was intense, but there's actually a recording in there of me kind of moaning and groaning at the beginning, dealing and working with this intense, small, diminutive green plant, Wayapunga. So this is from the album Love Bomb, and yeah, that's for the background on this track. Okay, guys, thanks for listening. We'll catch you soon next week, and thank you for walking your walk. You keep doing it. Don't take any shit, but if you do, you know what to do. You do it with grace.